Have you ever stood up against something you knew was wrong, even when everyone said you couldn't win? The morning light filtered through the blinds of Danielle Rivers' modest apartment as she sat before her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. At 27, she had never imagined herself becoming the center of a controversy. A brilliant software engineer who preferred elegant code to confrontation, who believed that merit would eventually triumph over prejudice. But after 3 years at Tech Fusion, one of Austin's most prestigious tech companies, that belief had eroded, replaced by a steely determination that surprised even herself. The cursor blinked on the screen, beside the words, "Send now." Her lawsuit against Tech Fusion was complete. Pages of documented incidents, patterns of behavior, statistics that told a story of systematic discrimination. Once she clicked that button, there would be no going back. Her career might never recover. Sometimes, her grandmother had told her, doing what's right feels like jumping off a cliff, you do it anyway. Danielle took a deep breath and clicked. What she never expected, the narrator continues, was that the man she was fighting against, Nathan Cole, the ice-cold CEO whom everyone feared and respected, would become the person who understood her most. This is the story of a woman who dared to challenge the system and found both justice and love in the place she least expected it. Danielle Rivers stood out at Tech Fusion from her first day, not because of her remarkable coding abilities, which were considerable, but because she didn't fit the unspoken template of a Tech Fusion engineer. While her colleagues casually dropped references to their Stanford dorms or MIT professors, Danielle had graduated from Texas State University, putting herself through school by working night shifts at a 24-hour diner. Where they spoke of Gap, years spent backpacking through Europe or interning at Google, she had stories of debugging her community college's registration system as a favor to a professor who saw her potential. "Hey Rivers, can you take notes today?" Kevin, her project lead, asked as he did at the start of every meeting without waiting for a response. 3 computer science degrees, a portfolio of innovative solutions, and somehow she was still designated the team secretary. The patterns were subtle enough to make her doubt herself at first. The way her suggestions in meetings would be met with silence, only to be enthusiastically embraced when repeated by male colleagues minutes later. How deadlines for her were always urgent, while others received flexibility. The casual dismissal of her concerns about a potential software vulnerability that later became a crisis. "I need those projections by EOD," her manager would say to her, while telling her male colleagues they could have it ready whenever you can get around to it. It wasn't until she began documenting everything that the patterns became undeniable. "You're imagining things," said Mark from HR after her 3rd attempt to discuss the issue. "Tech Fusion is a meritocracy. If you're not advancing, maybe consider that the problem isn't the system." The real breaking point came after the Fletcher incident. Tech Fusion's flagship product had crashed during a demo for Fletcher Global, a potential $30 million client. The engineering team was in panic, the sales team was apoplectic, and the client was considering walking away. Danielle had stayed at the office for 48 hours straight, subsisting on vending machine coffee and determination, tracing the bug to an obscure interaction between 2 code modules that no one else had spotted. By the time she finally emerged, bleary-eyed but triumphant with a solution that saved the Fletcher contract, she'd expected at least acknowledgement. Instead, at the company celebration 2 weeks later, she stood at the back of the room, watching. 5 men from her team received the Team of the Year award and a substantial bonus. Her name wasn't even mentioned in the speech. "Didn't you fix the bug that saved the Fletcher account?" whispered Alicia, a junior developer who had joined the team recently. "Yeah, I did," Danielle replied quietly, her hands gripping her water glass a little tighter, the ice long melted. "So why aren't you up there?" "Good question." That night, alone in her apartment, anger finally overcame caution. She typed up an email titled "Internal Complaint Workplace Discrimination," attaching a meticulous spreadsheet documenting 3 years of incidents, large and small. After 3 follow-ups and a dismissive meeting with HR, her complaint was quietly closed with no action taken. "It's not that we don't value diversity, Mark from HR had explained with a practiced smile. "But we can't find evidence of systematic issues. Perhaps you're being too sensitive." The weeks that followed were a blur of research, consultations, and soul-searching. Finally, Danielle sat across from Meera Patel, an attorney specializing in workplace discrimination cases, sliding her documentation across the desk. "This is impressively thorough," Meera said, looking up from the file. "Most people don't document with this level of detail." "I'm an engineer," Danielle replied. "Data matters. You understand this won't be easy?" Meera asked, her expression serious. "They'll fight back hard. Your career might never recover even if we win." "I'm not doing this for easy," Danielle replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm doing this for every person who deserved to be seen and wasn't, for every person who will come after me." Meanwhile, in a sleek office on the 42nd floor with a panoramic view of Austin's skyline, Nathan Cole stood contemplating the city he had conquered. At 35, he had built Tech Fusion from a dorm room startup into a tech powerhouse, employing over 1,000 people. A Stanford prodigy once featured in 30 Under 30, Nathan believed wholeheartedly that talent and hard work were all that mattered in his company. "Mr. Cole," his assistant interrupted, her voice unusually hesitant. "Legal needs to see you. Immediately. We're being sued for discrimination by an employee. They say it doesn't look good." "What would you do if you were in Danielle's shoe? Would you have the courage to file that lawsuit, knowing it might end your career?" Share your thoughts in the comments below while we continue Danielle and Nathan's journey in the next part, where an unexpected meeting changes everything. The news of Danielle's lawsuit spread through Tech Fusion's glass-walled offices like wildfire. Colleagues who once sat with her at lunch suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Her team lead reassigned her to maintenance projects. "Just until this blows over," he said, not meeting her eyes. "They're trying to isolate you," Meera explained during their weekly call. "That's a standard tactic. Make you feel alone, make you doubt yourself, and stay strong, but easier said than done." Each morning, as Danielle badged into the building, she felt the weight of stairs, the whisper of conversations that stopped when she approached. Someone had changed her desktop background to a picture of a grenade. Another day, she found her keyboard mysteriously sticky with spilled soda. Small things. Deniable things. Nathan Cole's first instinct had been to let the legal team handle it. These things happened in tech, disgruntled employees looking for payouts. He had meetings to attend, investors to court, a company to run. But that night, something made him pull up Danielle Rivers' personnel file. Her technical evaluations were stellar. Client feedback praised her troubleshooting skills. Yet her performance reviews contained vague concerns about her attitude and fit with company culture. Curious, he dug deeper, reviewing meeting recordings, her internal complaint, the dismissal report. The inconsistencies were troubling. "I want to meet with her," he told Vanessa Cho, Tech Fusion's chief counsel, the next morning. "Directly, before this goes further." "Absolutely not," Vanessa said firmly. "Anything you say can be used against us. This isn't a technical problem you can debug, Nathan. It's a legal liability. Let us handle it." "Schedule it anyway," Nathan replied, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. When Danielle received the meeting request directly from the CEO's office, her stomach dropped. She forwarded it to Meera immediately. "They want to intimidate you," Meera said, voice tight with concern. "The CEO doesn't get involved unless they're worried. Bring a recorder. Don't sign anything. Say as little as possible. Should I cancel?" "No. Go and listen. Just be careful. These people didn't get where they are by playing fair." The executive conference room felt impossibly large, with just the two of them seated at opposite ends of a polished mahogany table. Nathan Cole was taller than Danielle had expected, his presence commanding even in the understated charcoal suit. His expression was unreadable as he studied her. "Ms. Rivers," he began, his voice measured and professional. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I was hoping we could discuss your concerns directly without the adversarial nature of legal proceedings." "Of course you were," Danielle replied, keeping her voice level. Legal proceedings have discovery requirements and public records. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. I assure you, transparency is exactly what I'm interested in. TechFusion prides itself on creating an equitable workplace where talent is rewarded regardless of background. With all due respect, Mr. Cole, that hasn't been my experience, nor the experience of many others at this company. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Then, help me understand your experience. Danielle had prepared for threats, for manipulation, for corporate doublespeak. She hadn't prepared for this direct request. Cautiously, she opened her laptop and began walking through her evidence. Emails showing her contributions being overlooked, meeting recordings where male colleagues received credit for her ideas, performance reviews that praised male employees for being assertive while criticizing her for being too direct. She showed compensation data revealing that female engineers, with comparable performance metrics, earned 22% less than their male counterparts. She presented statistics on promotion rates, speaking time in meetings, and project assignment patterns. For 40 minutes, Nathan sat in silence taking occasional notes, asking questions for clarification, his expression increasingly thoughtful. And what would resolution look like to you? He finally asked. Danielle had rehearsed demands with Mira, back pay, promotion, policy changes, but in that moment, something more fundamental rose to her lips. Mr. Cole, I'm not here to be convinced to drop my case with a settlement offer. I'm here because I want people like me to never have to do this again after I'm gone. TechFusion talks about innovation and future thinking, but your cultural infrastructure is decades out of date. Fix that, and the rest follows. Nathan's pen paused above his notepad. That's more systemic than I expected. Systematic. Problems require systemic solution. Thank you for your time, Ms. Rivers, he said after a moment. I'll consider everything you've shared. Danielle left feeling oddly unsettled. She had expected anger, defensiveness, perhaps a thinly veiled threat wrapped in a settlement offer. Not this attentiveness. What she didn't know was that Nathan stayed in that conference room for 2 more hours, reviewing her evidence again and again. That night, he called an emergency meeting with his executive team, most of whom were already preparing for a protracted legal battle. I want a complete audit of our hiring practices, performance reviews, and promotion decisions for the past 5 years, he announced. And I want it done by an external firm, not our own. People, that's an overreaction, objected the CFO. One employee with a grudge. Did you actually read her documentation? Nathan interrupted. Because I did. Every page, and either she's fabricated an elaborate, consistent pattern of evidence, which seems unlikely, or we have a blind spot. I'm not interested in winning a lawsuit if it means defending practices that shouldn't exist in my company. 3 days later, as Danielle was updating Mira on her meeting with Nathan, an unexpected email arrived from Nathan Cole's personal account. Ms. Rivers, I have some follow-up questions about the performance review system you mentioned. Would you be willing to provide additional insights? NC. She stared at the screen, suspicious. What do you think? She asked Mira. Is this a trap? Could be, Mira admitted, but it's unusual for a CEO to reach out directly like this. If you respond, keep it factual, professional, and document everything. Curiosity 1. Danielle responded with detailed observations about the subtle biases in the company's evaluation metrics, how subjective criteria like leadership potential and cultural fit consistently disadvantaged women and minorities, while measurable achievements were downplayed. To her surprise, he replied within an hour with thoughtful questions about potential alternatives. This began a cautious email exchange that extended over weeks, Nathan asking about specific experiences, Danielle hesitantly providing honest answers, both maintaining a careful professionalism that nevertheless began to develop a rhythm. Do you believe these issues are unique to TechFusion, or industry-wide? He asked in one late-night exchange. Industry-wide, she replied, but that doesn't absolve individual companies from addressing them. Someone has to go first. Would you be available to meet again next Tuesday? Nathan's email read after several weeks of correspondence. "I'd like to discuss potential changes to our evaluation system. Your input would be valuable." Danielle agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly to see if anything would actually change. This time they met in a smaller conference room, with notepads rather than laptops or recording devices, a subtle shift from formal deposition to collaborative discussion. "I've been reviewing the preliminary audit results," Nathan began, sliding a folder across the table. "You were right. The patterns are undeniable once you know to look for them. The external audit had uncovered significant disparities in how employees from different backgrounds were evaluated, compensated, and promoted. Women were held to higher performance standards. Employees from non-prestigious universities advanced more slowly, regardless of performance metrics." "I thought we were a meritocracy," Nathan said, a hint of genuine disappointment in his voice. "I believed talent always rose to the top, regardless of background." "It's a common belief," Danielle replied, "especially for those who rose to the top themselves." "What does that mean?" he asked, a defensive edge briefly returning to his voice. Danielle considered her words carefully. "Success makes it easy to believe the system is fair because it worked for you. But sometimes people succeed despite the system, not because of it. They work twice as hard to get half as far. Like you did. Like many people do. Every day." Their meetings became regular occurrences over the following month, Nathan implementing changes based on Danielle's insights. Blind resume reviews to eliminate name and school bias, structured interview protocols to ensure consistent evaluation, transparent promotion criteria, with measurable benchmarks rather, then subjective assessments, small shifts that began rippling through the company culture. Not without resistance. Several executives pushed back, a few engineers complained about lowering the bar, and Nathan had to have some difficult conversations with longtime managers. One evening, as their meeting ran late, discussing a particularly thorny issue with the bonus structure, Nathan checked his watch. "I'm starving. Have you eaten?" "No, I was planning to grab something after. There's a Thai place around the corner that delivers. If you don't mind working through dinner." Over containers of pad thai and green curry, their conversation gradually drifted beyond workplace policies to books they'd both read, ethical considerations in AI development, and eventually their personal journeys into tech. "You know," Nathan said, twirling noodles with chopsticks, "I started coding because I was a lonely kid. The computer didn't care where I came from or how awkward I was. It just cared if my logic was sound." "So did I," Danielle admitted, surprised by the connection. "It was the one place where being right was all that mattered, not how loud you were or how confidently you spoke. That's why I thought tech fusion was fair," Nathan continued, his voice quieter now. "I wanted to create what I needed when I was younger, a place where the work spoke for itself. The intention was good, but the execution was flawed." As they gathered their things to leave, Nathan paused at the door. "I thought I was building something fair," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "But if it took a lawsuit for me to see the problems, then I wasn't good enough, was I?" The vulnerability in his question caught Danielle off guard. For the first time, she saw Nathan not as the CEO, not as her opponent, but as someone genuinely grappling with his own blind spots. Recognizing, "It now counts for something," she said softly. "Most people just keep defending the status quo. Thank you for that. But I'm not sure it's enough." As weeks passed and the lawsuit remained in a holding pattern, neither advancing nor being dismissed, Danielle noticed subtle changes in how she felt before their meetings. A flutter of anticipation rather than dread. She found herself spending extra moments choosing her outfit, refreshing her lipstick, checking her reflection in her phone camera. "This is ridiculous," she told herself one evening, discarding a third outfit option. "He's still the CEO of the company you're suing. This is still a legal case about discrimination. Keep your head straight, Rivers." But the boundaries between professional collaboration and personal connection were blurring. When Nathan smiled at one of her jokes, the corner of his eyes crinkling in a way that seemed reserved just for her. When their hands accidentally touched reaching for the same document, lingering a half-second longer than necessary. When their eyes held contact across the conference table a moment longer than professional courtesy required, something was shifting that neither had anticipated. "Mira," Danielle confessed during their weekly update call, "I think I might be in trouble here." "What happened? Did they threaten you? Try to force a settlement?" "No, nothing like that. I think I might be starting to like him, Nathan, as a person." A long silence followed. "Danielle," Mira finally said, her voice carefully neutral, "that would be complicated, I know. It's completely unprofessional and probably a terrible idea, and maybe they're planning this as some elaborate strategy. Is it mutual?" Mira interrupted. Danielle hesitated. Think it might be, but neither of us has said anything. We're keeping it strictly professional." "Keep it that way," Mira advised, "at least until the case is resolved. The optics alone would undermine everything we've built." Danielle agreed, but found it increasingly difficult to maintain distance. Each meeting revealed new layers to Nathan, his dry sense of humor, his genuine concern when she mentioned her mother's health challenges, the way he listened intently when she spoke, as if cataloging every word. "You've changed," commented Alicia, the junior developer, as they grabbed coffee one morning. "You seem lighter, happier." "Just feeling more optimistic about things," Danielle replied vaguely. "Does this mean you're dropping the lawsuit?" "No. The case isn't about my personal feelings. It's about making structural changes that benefit everyone." But even as she said it, Danielle wondered if her resolve was weakening, if the growing warmth she felt for Nathan was clouding her judgment about the case. As the court date approached, pressure mounted from all sides. TechFusion's board demanded Nathan settle the case quickly and quietly. The company's lawyers had prepared an aggressive defense strategy, dissecting Danielle's work history for any possible vulnerabilities. Tech blogs were running stories speculating about the disgruntled engineer taking on a tech giant. Meanwhile, the internal changes at TechFusion were beginning to show results. The new evaluation system had resulted in several unexpected promotions. Team compositions were becoming more diverse as the blind resume screening process brought in candidates who might have been overlooked before. Nathan sat alone in his office late one evening, reviewing the final legal brief his team had prepared, a BIM document that painted Danielle as an underperformer, seeking to blame others for her failures. A document filled with half-truths and strategic omissions, distorting the very real contributions and obstacles Danielle had documented so clearly. As he read the character assassination disguised as legal strategy, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: shame. Deep, visceral shame at what his company was willing to do to win. His phone buzzed with a message from Danielle. "Just saw the latest Tech Daily article. Your PR team is working overtime. The comment section is interesting." He pulled up the article, a thinly veiled hit piece suggesting she was using the lawsuit for attention. The comments were worse, filled with sexist assumptions about her capabilities and motivations. Nathan closed his laptop with more force than necessary. This wasn't what he had built TechFusion for. This wasn't the legacy he wanted. The next morning, Nathan called an emergency board meeting, ignoring the protests about the short notice. "I'm withdrawing our defense," he announced to stunned silence. "We're acknowledging the issues in our workplace culture, committing to systemic changes, and offering a fair settlement." "That's corporate suicide," the board chair spluttered, face reddening. "Admitting fault will open us to more lawsuits. Every disgruntled employee will see us as an easy target." "Or," Nathan countered calmly, "it signals that we're a company with the courage to acknowledge our mistakes and fix them, that we care more about being right than appearing right. The shareholders will understand that long-term integrity is better than short-term damage control. I've been speaking with Rivers regularly about these issues. The changes we've already implemented have improved productivity and morale. This isn't just the right thing to do morally, it's the right business decision." The debate raged for hours, but Nathan stood firm. By afternoon, TechFusion had issued a press release acknowledging the validity of concerns raised in Danielle Rivers' lawsuit, outlining specific policy changes already implemented and committing to a third-party audit of their workplace practices. Going forward, Danielle was in Mira's office reviewing deposition strategies when the news broke. "They're agreeing with us?" she asked in disbelief, reading the statement that had just popped up on Mira's computer. "No one does that, especially not before a court forces them to." "This is unusual," Mira agreed, scanning the document with professional skepticism. "And potentially a very smart PR move. Appear contrite, promise changes, avoid the messy public trial." "But these are exactly the changes we asked for," Danielle pointed out. "Blind resume screening, standardized performance metrics, pay transparency, external auditing. The question is whether they'll actually follow through once the pressure's off." Attached to the official press release was a personal note from Nathan. "This was the right thing to do. Thank you for having the courage to make us face it. Can we talk?" NC. At the courthouse steps where they were scheduled for a preliminary hearing, reporters gathered expecting corporate drama. Instead, Nathan approached the microphones alone. "Tech Fusion has fallen short of our own standards," he said, cameras flashing around him. "And systemic errors start at the top with leadership. I personally apologize to Ms. Rivers and any employee who has experienced bias in our company. Rather than fight this case, we are committed to acknowledging our shortcomings and implementing real change." Later that day, after consulting with Mira, Danielle announced she was withdrawing her lawsuit, explaining, "This was never about money or personal vindication. It was about creating lasting change. Tech Fusion's commitment to reform achieves what litigation would have sought to compel, but in a more collaborative way. The settlement included back pay for affected employees, funding for diversity initiatives, and an agreement for regular external audits of the company's hiring and promotion practices." 2 weeks later, when the media frenzy had subsided somewhat, Nathan reached out again. "We're creating a new position, Director of Cultural Innovation, focused on building a truly inclusive workplace. I can't think of anyone better qualified. Would you consider it?" Danielle was torn. Was this just corporate image management? A way to neutralize her as a potential future threat? Or a genuine opportunity to create the change she had fought for from a position of influence rather than opposition? "I'd need complete independence," she replied after careful consideration. "And direct access to you and the board, not filtered through layers of management." "Absolutely," came his immediate response. "I thought you might say that. Already built it into the proposal." On her first day in the new role, Danielle found Nathan waiting by her new office. A corner space with actual windows, a stark contrast to the interior cubicle she'd occupied before. "I have a confession," he said, closing the door. "I didn't just offer you this job because you're qualified. I offered it because these past months working with you, seeing how you think, your courage. I've never met anyone like you." Danielle felt her pulse quicken. "That's completely inappropriate," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "You're the CEO. I'm an employee with a very public legal case against the company." "No," he nodded. "That's why I needed to be honest about it, and to assure you it will never impact your position here. Your work is too important. But I also couldn't keep pretending I don't feel whatever this is." As he turned to leave, Danielle called after him, "Nathan." He paused at the door. "I feel it too," she admitted quietly. "But I can't explore that while working directly with you. It would undermine everything I've fought for. People would say I sued the company to get close to you, or that I dropped the suit because of personal feelings, or a dozen other narratives that erase the actual issues." "I understand," he said softly. "Your integrity is part of why I—" He stopped himself. "Part of why you what?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Part of why I can't stop thinking about you," he finished. They stood in silence. The weight of impossibility between them. "Maybe in another life," Danielle finally said, "where you weren't the CEO and I wasn't the whistleblower." "Maybe," Nathan agreed. "Or maybe we just need to find a different way." 3 months later, Tech Fusion hosted an all-company meeting to share the results of their cultural transformation initiative. Employee satisfaction scores had increased by 22%. Retention rates among women and minorities had improved dramatically. New hiring practices were yielding more diverse candidate pools without any decrease in technical qualifications. In fact, team problem-solving metrics had improved. Danielle, now reporting to a newly created chief inclusion officer, rather than directly to Nathan, had led much of this change. As she presented the results to applause, she caught Nathan's eye from across the room, his smile filled with unmistakable pride. "The data speaks for itself," she concluded. "When everyone has a fair chance to contribute, we all benefit. This isn't about lowering standards. It's about removing the artificial barriers that kept us from seeing all the talent available to us." After the presentation, several employees approached to thank her, including some who had avoided her. During the lawsuit, as the crowd thinned, Nathan approached. "That was brilliant," he said. "You made complex metrics relatable and compelling. People are listening." "That's the goal," she replied with a small smile. "Change minds, change systems. Dinner to celebrate." "As colleagues, of course." Danielle hesitated, then made a decision. "I'm not your direct report anymore," she replied. "Technically, we could have dinner as whatever we want to be." That evening, at a quiet restaurant away from the tech district, they finally spoke openly about what had been growing between them. "I never expected this," Danielle admitted, twirling her wine glass. "When I filed that lawsuit, you were the enemy, the face of everything wrong with tech culture, and you were a problem to solve," Nathan replied, "until you became the person who helped me see more clearly, who made me a better leader." "Do you think we're crazy?" she asked. "The optics alone may." "Probably," he laughed. "But I don't care about optics anymore. I care about being real. You taught me that. That integrity matters more than appearance. People will talk. They'll say I manipulated my way in, or that you bought me off. Let them. We know the truth, that this grew from mutual respect, not despite our conflict, but because of how we each handled it." Danielle reached across the table, taking his hand for the first time outside the context of a handshake. "You know this won't be easy, right? People will question everything, my competence, your judgment. I'm not doing this for easy," Nathan said, echoing her words from months before. "I'm doing this for right, and this, us, feels right." His fingers intertwined with hers, a silent acknowledgement of all they had overcome to reach this moment. 6 months later, as Tech Fusion was recognized with an industry award for workplace transformation, Nathan and Danielle attended together, no longer hiding their relationship. The journey hadn't been smooth. There had been critical articles, social media speculation, and uncomfortable questions from investors, but they had weathered it together. "People still ask me how this happened," Danielle said as they danced. At the after-party, "How I went from suing you to loving you." "What do you tell them?" Nathan asked, holding her closer. "That sometimes," she said, "the bravest thing is not starting the fight. It's recognizing when someone's genuinely trying to change, and that true connection can begin in the most unlikely places." "Some might call it ironic," Nathan mused, "that I found my heart by having my company sued. I prefer to call it justice," Danielle smiled. "Of more than one kind." As the evening ended, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the city lights of Austin, the same skyline Nathan had gazed at alone months before, thinking himself invincible. "You know what makes our story work?" Danielle asked, leaning against him. "What's that?" "That neither of us had to compromise our values to find each other. You didn't have to stop being a leader committed to excellence. I didn't have to stop fighting for fairness. We just had to expand our understanding of what those things really mean." Nathan nodded, kissing the top of her head. "That's the real transformation." Sometimes, the narrator concludes, we fight for justice and unexpectedly find love. But the true miracle happens when both can exist without compromising either. For Danielle and Nathan, their journey began with a demand for fairness and resulted in a transformation neither could have imagined. A reminder that the courage to stand up for what's right can lead to changes that ripple far beyond what we first envision. If this story touched you, if you believe that speaking truth can change not just systems, but hearts, there are more stories like this waiting. Stories that remind us it's never too late for justice, growth, or love. Thank you for joining us for Danielle and Nathan's journey. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Did you see yourself in their story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. For more inspiring stories of courage, transformation, and unexpected love, subscribe to our channel. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest changes begin with one person brave enough to speak truth.